For the past few years, we've been living in a world where you can print a song in 30 seconds without really knowing how to play an instrument, but I chose to spend 6 years learning, writing, and producing one album my way. People said I was being too slow, that I should just release my songs, that it was just music. But what if taking time isn't a mistake, but a superpower? What if I told you you could make time your friend, instead of seeing it as your enemy? I need to spend a minute on giving you some quick context first. After a few years of writing songs and making music, I got an idea for a project. At first, it was supposed to be an EP, and the first song I wrote for it was called Overthinking. It's the song that gave me the initial direction and made me want to pour myself deeply into songwriting and music production. It was like suddenly I knew the exact reason I was making music. It gave me a purpose and a reason to keep creating. Everyone who considers themselves an overthinker knows that it's really draining and it can be really hard to set free from this spiral of constant noise in your head. So my idea was clear. I was gonna turn my hyperactive mind into music. And that's how the first idea for the project Maze was born. I started writing songs with one rule in mind: writing lyrics as raw and honest as possible, sharing my struggles and self-questioning, but with a twist. Something about me is that I've always been an optimistic person. Some friends say I'm lucky, but I just think it's because I try to charge myself with as much positive energy as I can in everything I do and every media I consume. So in addition to the raw lyrics, I really wanted to make songs that would distribute positive energy, kind of like a magic pill of energy boost. And at first, these songs became my own remedy, but what I wanted the most was to be able to create something meaningful enough so that it could offer a similar experience to other people who would listen to my music and wanted to feel like they were not alone. And that's where my music production skills came in handy, because back then I knew the kind of music I loved and wanted to make, but there was still so much I needed to learn. But I was passionate, so I really wasn't counting how many hours I was spending on learning. I just wanted to understand and master my craft inside out. Doing everything myself has been very time and energy consuming, but it's also been the most rewarding part of the process. Since I started playing with GarageBand 10 years ago, I've been obsessed with trying to find the next piece of information that would make my music sound more professional, but also more reflective of my vision. This is my life's project, and now I'm finally ready to start sharing it with you. But why now? I think nowadays, society pushes us to fantasize over getting everything quickly, doing everything fast, and having immediate results. And I was like that too when I started music. I was a student and I was only making music in my free time, but I was obsessed with memorable melodies and being able to turn a simple idea into a final MP3 file. It was so much fun for me, but I also immediately felt the pressure to do something with it. Like if being in law school had taught me how to be Taylor Swift somehow. We experience so much outside and inside pressure, so it's not really anyone's fault. Being harassed by perfect looking lives on our device that stays in our hands several hours every day probably doesn't help either. And somehow our brain likes to think that we should be as competent as every person that pops on our screen, including trained professionals. Otherwise that we suck. And some of us convince themselves that they are already great. Some of us convince themselves that they will never be. And some of us convince themselves that they're not, but that someday they could be. And the first step in making time your ally is choosing the last option and making peace with the fact that someday will not be tomorrow. And it also will not happen magically. Now, I'm aware no one wants to hear that, but I feel like we all need to be reminded this every once in a while, including myself. Every time we launch ourselves into doing something new, actually, I know by experience, the quicker you make peace with it, the less likely you are to let your self-doubt become your own enemy. When I began my journey with making music, I already thought I was running out of time, and when I wasn't getting the results I wanted, I blamed myself, despite the fact that I was simultaneously a double degree student, part of a team building a musical from scratch, performing on stage, and also a founder of a student association. That was a lot, and don't get me wrong, I'm happy I did all those things, but there are only 24 hours in a day, and you can easily end up running after time if you don't understand the most impactful way to use it. Some things can be accelerated, sure, but sometimes you just can't skip the process. Now, I'm not gonna tell you how you should invest your time because everyone's life is different, but I can share with you my experience and the 3 areas where time well spent really made a difference. The sentence I've heard the most in my life is, "Your mind works differently." What do you mean my mind works differently? Is it a good thing or a bad thing? What am I supposed to do with that? So as I kept investigating, trying to understand what on earth that could mean, what at first felt like, how am I supposed to act in order to stop getting that comment constantly, then became, how am I supposed to act if I stop letting outside noise after my actions and start listening to myself instead? It wasn't easy, it really wasn't easy. So I decided to call my project Mind Maze, because writing those songs and creativity in general has always been a way to allow myself to explore the maze inside my mind, putting a light on parts of it that weren't comfortable. Does anyone know who I am? Does anyone really understand me? Do I even understand myself? Why do I overthink and overadapt all the time? Why does it feel so exhausting to just exist every day? As I kept writing and questioning parts of my subconscious, I also kept growing and healing parts of myself. Learning self-acceptance and self-compassion was essential in figuring out how to finally share those songs that were so deeply honest without toning down the message. You probably have your own journey with mental health and self-acceptance. Some people have it easier than others. We're not really responsible for it, that's just life. But the way we see ourselves and the trauma we accumulate growing up train our brain in a certain way. And sometimes you really have no choice but to do a whole makeover of your own subconscious, because your survival instinct will simply not let you do what you think you want to do. I'll give you a simple example. Social anxiety. I feel like many of us have experienced social anxiety, some in certain cases and some all the time. But when you go through life normalizing anxiety, just thinking, well, it's my life now, you basically accept to give away a huge portion of your energy to a part of your brain that thinks it's helping you, but ends up sabotaging itself. Now, healing is not easy. It requires a lot of mental strength, so if you're on this path, I think you should acknowledge that it is not easy and not everyone can do that. It's never our fault, but it's always our responsibility. And I think it's one of those things where time can really work in your favor. If you invest some energy into yourself, you will probably discover rocks that were blocking you for years, and lifting them will bring you places you would probably have never reached otherwise, and at least you will learn how you function and end up saving a lot of time and energy as a result. Another thing only time builds is experience. We always hear there's only one of you, so be yourself. But when you have no experience, it's easier said than done. What does being yourself even mean? As I wrote more songs, I knew I would have to introduce them to the world at some point, and that social media was going to be one way. But as I've mentioned before, as someone who's always been told your mind works differently, social media is a real struggle for me because I don't really understand how it works. I don't really use social media, so understanding what people want to see was always really difficult for me. So instead of running after algorithms and trends, I decided to dig deeper and build a world of mine, a world no one can steal or copy, because they didn't live the same experiences I did. They haven't been through what I've been through. They haven't built a habit to turn their emotions and overthinking into music, because it's the only way they know how to deal with it. As artists, but also as people in general, our value shouldn't depend exclusively on the amount of people who clicked on a button. I know I'll always be the most grateful to everyone who gives me support, and I consider the ultimate measure of the impact my music has is people. But in the end, I think experience brings value to art. The time we spend living and digging inside to find nuggets of ideas that are worth turning into art is so valuable. And for that, I needed time to teach me how to share the most vulnerable aspects of how I feel in a way people haven't heard before. But there's also one last thing. I have the conviction that if I'd pushed myself to release more songs as fast as possible, it would have been a mistake. When I started, even though I was really passionate and motivated, I wasn't ready yet to carry a full project by myself and make it into something meaningful that I'd be proud of for many years to come. This isn't about holding art hostage by fear of judgment. It's about refusing to rush the final version and shrink the potential impact a song could have. In my opinion, art is not supposed to be consumed like a fast food burger. Even though that's how a lot of it is consumed now, I'd be delusional to think the opposite. But hearing how much impact you've made by creating intentionally is so much more rewarding than any amount of virality. And if I don't feel deeply proud of myself and excited to share a song I've made, I just don't think it's good enough. And Jesus said it best, not bad but not good. I could spend a lot of time talking about mastery, but I think we all know mastery requires time. So I'll just say one thing. Time invested in learning will never be wasted, even if you think it's slowing you down, because you might get lucky once and find ways to avoid putting in the work. But in the end, life is long, and if you invest time in learning immediately, maybe you'll suck in the beginning and you'll feel like you're stagnating because you're taking more time than others to do things. But months and years after, the stagnation part will not even matter because you will be in a different category than people who purely relied on luck. And again, some people need more time to learn than others because not everyone starts in the same position, but if you look back, you will probably be happier you spent time learning how to do something rather than pretending you already knew how to do it. Now, I'm not 100% done with the project, but I realized I was ready to make other people part of the journey. I want to get to know more people who can relate to my story, people who get told they're weird even if it's not meant to be mean, people who can feel out of place or left out sometimes, people who always wondered why they felt deeply misunderstood, almost like a little alien, people who've always been more sensitive to things other people don't care about. I turned our story into songs you can dance to while crying at the same time. So if you're curious about hearing that, please subscribe. I've been using YouTube as one of my main tools for learning and growing over the past decade or more. I'm so grateful to all the people who create amazing content, sharing a part of their story every day. So I'm obviously super excited to start sharing my own journey with you, and I really want to use this page to create a mini world on which you can listen to my music, but also I really want to share my perspective on life, self-acceptance, growing, and many topics about being human and figuring ourselves out. So let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm HAYLEEN, and I've been turning my overthinking into music for the past 6 years. And this year I'm challenging myself to start sharing my journey with you and taking up more space. If there is one thing I want you to keep from this video, it is this. Don't be afraid to give yourself a realistic time to create and grow. Don't be afraid of the difficult parts. Celebrate every milestone and you'll see you'll enjoy time much more. When it comes to art, sometimes it just needs more time to come to life, and that's okay. This project is more than a collection of songs for me. It is a time capsule of the person I was when I started and the person I became. It is the happiness of thinking of myself as a kid with a dream to learn how they make those cool songs I love to hear on the radio that stay in my head all day and make me feel less lonely. And it's also all the people I met along the way and the pride of letting someone hear the final version of a song, knowing they also heard the very first one. Time is not an enemy. We live like we're stuck in a race, constantly choosing between fast or never. But time well invested on yourself, it compounds, it doesn't disappear. It actually turns struggles into healing, and sometimes even into superpowers. It turns practice into mastery. It turns a simple idea you had when you woke up one day into a legacy that could touch hundreds or maybe even millions of people, who knows? So if you're taking your time on something important, don't apologize for it. Your project doesn't need to be fast, it just needs to be.
Working, I'm already ready to shake and better. That's my mind is becoming steady. I get it, I know overthinking isn't very healthy. That's who I am though. Could I really say it free? Does anyone know who I am? But then, do I even know what I'm meant to be by myself again? What do I even know? Guess I'll always feel it.